Start recording. Okay. So this section, which started from verse 54. So verse 54 onwards is a new section from in chapter 2, where Arjuna inquired about a transcendentalist. Transcendentalist means a spiritualist. What is how such a spiritualist? He's asking, if you call a person as a spiritual person, how does he speak? How does he live? How does he control himself? So this, he wants to understand his characteristics of such a person who is a transcendentalist. How does he speak? What is his language? How does he sit means how does he behave? How does he walk? So that was the question that triggered the next entire set of verses in this chapter, verses 52, 55 to 72 until the last. Krishna would describe the characteristics of a transcendentalist. Transcendentalist is one who is advanced spiritualist. What are his characteristics? So we discussed these verses already in brief. So the first verse says, Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O Partha, Arjuna, when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification which arise from mental concoction, and when his mind, thus purified, finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. Just to re-clarify about this verse, all the desires come from mind. That's what this means. And when that mind is purified, one gets satisfaction, real satisfaction in the self, means in the soul. So I discussed about multi-level existence. We have gross body, we have mind, which is subtle body, mind, intelligence, and ego, and then ultimately the soul, the core, our core self. These are the three levels of existence that we have. And so Krishna, when he is referring here, he is specifically talking about mind being purified. If our mind is impure, our senses would be running everywhere. We have so many desires to enjoy in this world, and so you are always agitated by those desires to enjoy in various ways. But for a person who is transcendentalist, a spiritually advanced person, for him all the desires that arise from mind, they are not there, especially for sense gratification. He may have spiritual desires. It's not that one can have no desire. It's never that one will have no desires. Mind cannot be emptied. Instead of the negative things, he will fill with positive things. That's the main meaning of this verse. Okay. So in that state, when mind is purified, he will find, where will he find satisfaction? In the self alone, means the soul. And thus he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. Such a person is situated in pure transcendental consciousness. Any questions on this? Anyone? Okay, we'll move on. And then the next verse is, one who is not disturbed in mind even amidst the threefold miseries, or elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called a sage of steady mind. So now Lord Krishna is describing who is a real sage. A real sage is one whose mind is not disturbed. when there are the threefold miseries. Threefold miseries, I discussed what are the threefold miseries. One is adhyatmika, which is caused by one's own body and mind. Adi daivika and adi bhautika. Adi daivika is miseries caused by calamities like coronavirus or SARS or earthquake, tsunamis. They're all going to cause miseries, if not for everyone, at least a good chunk of people, earthquakes. So that is Adi Dhaivika. And then Adi Bhautika means miseries caused by other people. It could be your boss, or it could be your in-laws, or it could be your mosquito, or it could be your dog, anything. Adi Bhautika. So these miseries, these disturbances, these miseries cause disturbance in the mind. Okay. If a person is not disturbed by such miseries caused by all these three aspects, neither is he elated when too much happy when there is happiness. If he is steady in both situations, which means he is actually free from attachment, fear, and anger. And such a person is called a sage of steady mind. What exactly happened with this person? He actually conquered his mind. That is the reason he is able to stay put in all the situations, both happy as well as miserable situations. How does that happen? For example, in bhakti, the practitioners of bhakti, for example, like us, right? We understand that all the miseries are caused by our own past karma. So when we understand that, we accept it, we don't reject it, we accept it and uh, try to be steady in those tough times. Hmm? And in fact, we are grateful to God that He has actually is actually helping to reduce that because of our faith in Him. That's how a sadhaka thinks. And at one point, those disturbances don't even bother him so much. That will be how it will work when a devotee or a spiritualist advances. Hmm? And when there is happiness, also he thinks that it is by the grace of God that thing has happened. He doesn't think that because I'm great, that's why uh, I'm getting this happiness. No, he doesn't think like that. He doesn't. So in both situations, he tries to connect and see situation in a God conscious way. So in that way, his mind is steady and peaceful, and he's not going to go through fear, anger. These situations will not be there because he's free from attachment from this world. Uh, he lives in this world, but he's not attached uh, for anything, like a water drop on a lotus leaf, right? You see, it shines like a uh, jewel, right? But it's never attached to the lotus leaf. Water always floats. So, like that, a practicing spiritualist, while he is living in this world, he is always free from attachment. He knows that everything in this world is a temporary situation, whether it is a misery or a happiness, everything is temporary. Situation will change. So such a person is a sage of steady mind. Prabhupada describes how who is a Muni, how he thinks that everything is by the mercy of Lord. Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabhaha. Prasanta Nihesa Manoratantar Srotaratna. Or one who has surpassed the stage of mental speculation and has come to the conclusion that Lord Krishna or Vasudeva is everything. He is fixed, he is called a Muni, fixed in mind. This also we studied. In the material world, one who is unaffected by whether good or evil he may obtain, neither praising it nor despising it, is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge. So he is not going to. So situations will be favorable, unfavorable sometimes, good or evil. So he's not going to praise or despise. He's always steady. Now, this is the new verse. Yada samharate chayam kurmo angani va sarvasa indriyan indriyardhebhyas tasya prajna pratishtita. One who is able to withdraw his senses from sense objects, as the tortoise draws its limbs within the shell, is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness. Right. So here the example of a tortoise is given. Yada samharate chayam. One who is able to withdraw his senses. Our senses are our tongue, nose, ears, eyes, through which we interact with this world. So one who is able to withdraw his senses from sense objects. As the tortoise withdraws its limbs within the shell, is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness. A tortoise can at will withdraw its limbs, right? Tortoise has a very strong shell. Even though it has a very tiny small body, it has a very strong shell. And now it can withdraw its limbs, its head, its legs, its hands, everything, everything anytime it wants. And it just looks like a shell after that. Now when it does that, even if an elephant steps on it, nothing happens to tortoise, because the shell is so strong that it doesn't hurt the tortoise at all. You know? Similarly, I have once watched a video where a cobra tries to eat a tortoise, and tortoise just moves its limbs inside the body, inside the shell, and nothing happens to the tortoise because it's so strong, and the python couldn't consume it, and it spit it out, and it came out safe. Yeah? So that's the power of the tortoise. The tortoise, as long as it in a timely fashion moves its limbs in the body under the shell, it is safeguarded from any enemy. Nobody can conquer it. So similarly, if we can withdraw our senses from sense objects at will at the right moment, then nothing can disturb in this world. Nothing can disturb us from this world. Hmm? Otherwise, mind is always running after sense gratification in this world, right? You want to do that, this, you want to enjoy so many things in this world. But if your mind is able to understand, oh, the situation is not good for me, and withdraw your senses in timely fashion, what happens? You are not conquered by the sense objects. Hmm? So, a spiritualist whose mind is perfectly fixed, he is able to do such a thing. Huh? He has a handle on his senses. So, all of us, as we practice chanting regularly, we all get that ability to be able to control our senses. You can, otherwise, you sometimes you get too angry and get agitated, or you go into such an emotional uh, state of consciousness where you're totally disturbed. Those are all because we are not able to control our senses. Senses are not in our control. But as we steadily practice your chanting and attending these classes regularly, when we do that regularly, so then we will have a better control on our senses. So that's exactly this verse is talking about. Uh, so a person in perfect consciousness, he's able to withdraw his senses from sense objects at will, just like a tortoise. And just like a tortoise is completely safe when it is able to withdraw its limbs, we are also completely safe while living in this world from all the onslaught of material existence here in this world. So here is the test. The test of a yogi, devotee, or a self-realized soul is that he is able to control the senses according to his plan. Generally in this world, senses control the jiva. He has a desire for something, he would run after that. Everything is controlled by our desires, and our senses would run after them. Uh, Mind is the coordinating sense, right? So mind, so sense, we first see something, you get attracted, and the data is sent to the coordinating sense, mind. All the senses would send the information, like eyes, ears, tongue. They acquire information in this world, and then they would send that to the mind. Mind, when it acquires this information, it correlates with its past experiences. Oh, when I ate last time this gulab jamun, it was so tasty. I want to eat it again. When it sees the first time again, when it sees the gulab jamun again, the data is sent to the mind. Mind process based on its past experience. It wants to do it now. So now from thinking, you would go to the step of willing. Willing means you want to do that. From willing, you again move on to the step of acting. Thinking, no, thinking, feeling. No, first you think, and then you feel for it. You really strongly feel to have it, and then willing means act on it. So these are the stages in which we are dragged from one thing to the other in this world. Huh? We have so many uh, attractions, so many attachments in this world, and when we interact with our senses in this world, uh, we are attracted to those sense objects that we are attached to based on our past experiences, and our mind keeps on running from one thing to the other. Hmm? Sometimes somebody sees a new TV, immediately needs to get it. He sees a new series of televisions in Costco. That's why the whole advertising industry is also works like that. In the Costco, anytime you go, those people who are in US, they can they they know that, at the entrance is the most attractive things that attract most people's senses are kept, right? Mostly new brand televisions are a very cozy, jackets which are seasonally attractive, right? So they keep things, they know the psychology of people, right? You go to YouTube, for example, in the past 1 week you are searching for a certain, for example, you are researching for a car, right? All of a sudden when you watch anything, you only get car advertisements, right? Because they know exactly what your senses are looking. So this is exactly based on how Bhagavad Gita talks about these examples, how exactly our senses work. Hmm? So our mind is attracted to those things, and then naturally we try to acquire that happiness by having those things. We keep doing this again and again and again, right? So it's formally fixed in Krishna, perfect consciousness. Most people are, however, are servants of the senses and are thus directed by the dictation of the senses. This is the answer to the question as to how the yogi is situated. As yogi is situated such that he is never conquered by the senses. He is not under the dictation of the senses. Senses are compared to venomous serpents. They want to act very loosely and without any restriction. The yogi or the devotee must be very strong to control the serpents, like a snake charmer. He never allows them to act independently. Huh? There are many injunctions in the revealed scriptures. Some of them are don'ts and some of them are do's. Unless one is able to follow the do's and don'ts, restricting oneself from sense enjoyment, it's not possible to be firmly fixed in Krishna consciousness. Example is tortoise. विषया विनिवर्तन्ते निराहारस्य देहिना रसावर्जं रसोऽप्यस्य param drisva nivartate. Very famous verse, chapter 259. Though the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, the taste for sense objects remains. But ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness. So what does this mean? Though the embodied soul means all of us, we are all embodied soul, means we are in this body. We have a body. So we are called an embodied soul. The liberated soul do not have a physical body like us. So there we refer to him as liberated soul. Now we are an embodied soul. We are in this body because we have certain desires to fulfill. Otherwise, there is no need to have this body that we have right now. Though the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment. It can be restricted from sense enjoyment. The taste for sense objects remains. He still has the taste. We may try to restrict ourselves, by various means from enjoying the senses. But what is the background? The background is that the taste for the sense objects remains. But ceasing such engagement by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness. If you want to conquer the lower, you have to be experiencing the higher. That is what it means. I will give you an example, right? My daughter, she is only 2 years old. She will play with some toys. She will play with some toys. She will arrange some uh, what do you call, blocks. She would arrange some blocks, but she likes her car toy more than all these blocks. Okay, suppose when she is not in the awareness of the car, she would be playing with the blocks. But as soon as I bring the car toy to her, she would immediately, if she or by herself, if she sees that, she would immediately forget about the blocks and she will go and take the car toy and play with that, right? What has happened? Our mind is initially attracted and doing something right now, but as soon as it experiences a higher taste, it shifts the subject. Our mind is always working towards the top priority in the mind, right? That's how it works in this world. uh, Even all of us have such experience, right? We may be, for example, you're eating certain dishes, suddenly the server comes and gives you a new dish which is your favorite, right? What will you do? You stop eating all the other things and you start taking the new dish that was brought to you because that's your favorite, right? That's how it works. So how can an embodied soul who is very much attached to enjoying senses in this world, right? How can he give up that enjoyment? There is only one way. He has to experience higher taste. Hmm? Because the attraction for these sense objects remains with the embodied soul. As long as you have this physical body, you still have all those desires lurking behind. It may not be very active. Once you start practicing spiritual life, you start chanting and you start reading scriptures or hearing classes like this, then you are vibrating your consciousness at a higher level. Okay, so when you do that, you experience a higher happiness. When you experience higher happiness, naturally your lower happiness does not come into picture, right? Lower taste doesn't come into picture. You may still love, uh, you know you may still love the old sense enjoyment, like watching a movie, a specific movie that you were enjoying before. Those desires will still be there, but they're in the background. They're 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 not the top of the mind for you, because at the top of the mind you have a spiritual experience, a higher taste. Hmm? So that's what this verse is talking about. Hmm? The only way you can give up lower enjoyment is by experiencing higher enjoyment, by fixing your consciousness at the lotus feet of God. Hmm? Is that clear? Any questions? It's a very important verse. Is that silence means everybody understood it? Is that clear?
So, Prabhu, question.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Prabhu, anything, Prabhu.
So, Prabhu, the previous verse talks about the controlling the senses, but this verse talks about the focusing on the higher test, so
Correct.
higher principle.
Yeah.
Now, one should think about following the previous verse, or like how does the connection we should take it? Number one.
Okay.
And second thing was when does in our Krishna bhakti life, like what is the withdrawing senses would imply in terms of attraction to the our duty, like whatever we do at work. So
Mm.
for example, I'm getting assignment and
Mm-hmm.
my manager says, if you do such ABCD, then you'll get promoted and these are your options, opportunities.
Mm.
Now I can say, oh yeah, I want promotion because that will help to get more money. Then I can facilitate more things for my family.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm just trying to understand whether how much we can say that should I be withdrawing from the promotion as an aspect. Oh, that's a greed. Maybe
Mm.
I should not focus. Or maybe, oh, if I don't get promoted, I my job is at risk, so I better be on that path. For example, some companies have that policy that you have to keep getting promoted every 3 4 years, otherwise you're on the lowest bucket kind of.
Mm.
So I'm just trying to understand how do
Mm.
we take this our day to day life, the verse 58, and how do we take the verse 59 in connection to 58?
Okay. Very good question. So this verse, first let's discuss about the verse and then discuss the question you have. So this verse focuses on withdrawing senses. This has to happen. Without this, the next verse cannot happen. Okay. One should be vigilant of the dangers that one may encounter if he is, fully uh, unrestrained or uncontrolled in his sense gratification. Okay. So this talks about um, withdrawing senses, but this will not happen every time as you wish. Mind is, next verse actually talks about, the next verse after this verse, right, talks about um, Arjuna asks, it's so difficult to control mind.
Yeah.
So at this point, understand that this is the ideal thing to do, okay, to withdraw your senses. But this won't happen unless you have a higher taste. Actually, that's how this is related to that. um, because
Oh,
as long as you have this physical body, what is there? You have the taste for the sense object. You still want to eat certain things which may not be really good for you. You still may have the taste for wine, or those tastes will remain.
yeah.
But so the whole point is, you should not focus on negating the negatives, stopping the negatives. You should take the positives. The positives is taking to spiritual life seriously, means doing some practices like chanting every single day. It's like inoculation. If you have inoculation, so to not have coronavirus spread, right, there are two things. One is to control yourself from exposing yourself to the virus through using mask and social distancing, right? These aspects, minimizing your outwardly movement, that's controlling aspect. That's the previous verse. And this verse is specifically talking about inoculating yourself. This is the final solution, where you actually take the vaccine. You need to do both. Like this is, but this will make facilitate the first one. uh, Meaning in the sense, unless you are fully fixed in God consciousness, in higher consciousness, you will be always vulnerable to senses. So both, we should reject negatives and take to the positives. Positive is like vaccination. Reject the negative means trying to mingle with, maintaining social distance, uh, stopping the accident from happening, right?
Yeah.
Whereby you will be both are important. Without doing the first, second will not help so much.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yes.
when you fully develop higher taste, means when you are chanting nicely at one stage, as you all, some of you have started newly, this process of chanting. At After few years, you realize chanting has brought so much of transformation in your life. You don't get agitated so much, you don't get angry so much, without you knowing. Just like when you eat food, you don't know how you get strength, but it just works the way it should from inside out, right? Similarly, when you take vaccine, uh, you are naturally immune to so many things. You may not realize how it is working, but it just works from inside out. So like that, when you take to Krishna consciousness, you are just chanting the name, but you don't know the effect of it. But spiritually, it is very, very effective, and you become inoculated from so much of material sense gratification, right, desires that you had in the past. Your mind slowly and slowly gets purified. So that's how these two verses are related. Now,
Yes.
coming to your question is, should I think that, working, working too hard, is it like greedy? Should I you know stop pushing myself too much? uh, but at the same time, if I don't work uh, you know seriously, and I may not get promoted within a period of time, which company considers as, minimum time in which one should get um, promotion or whatever, right, considerations they have. So if you are working for a company, you should give your best, okay, within the time frame that you have. You don't work too much that, day and night you work, and
Yes.
push yourself to the brink of psychological issues, right? We don't do all of that, but as much as you can, you try to work within your capacity, without, jeopardizing your family life and your spiritual life. Work in your best capacity. uh, you
Mhm.
don't make it your the goal and the end of their life
Yes.
desire. This is just part of life. You
Yes.
need a job to lead your life.
Yes.
So you don't, uh, the manager is good, your karma is good. Sometimes you work very hard, you don't get any promotion. Get out.
Yes.
You feel, you don't feel depressed at that time if you're God conscious, because You know,
Yes.
working is in our hand, but not the results. That we already studied that verse.
Yes.
But we give our best. We don't feel discouraged when we don't get promotion. We still continue to give our best, and it ultimately we know very well that it's not the manager. Manager is just an instrument in getting you what your destiny is, right? Your destiny determines what you're supposed to get. If
Yes.
your happiness and misery is already fixed, it's a quota that you are already allotted in this body.
Yeah.
And manager is just an instrumentation. Don't ever crib that this manager is the reason I didn't get promotion.
Yeah.
That's not how it works. You put your best
Yeah.
and expect God, whatever He wants, and whatever is in our destiny will come natural. Nobody can take away a grain from what you deserve to get. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
how this world works. So always be peaceful and satisfied. Be giving your best uh,
Mhm.
at the same time without much greed or desire to get the whatever you wanted in your mind, right?
Yes,
Uh,
bro.
steadily work and mostly those who are spiritualists they would perform very well actually. They in fact they are the best performers, as you
Yes,
start
bro.
chanting and
Uh-huh.
because most people have a lot of anxiety at work because
Yes.
they're thinking, oh, will my job be safe? But a devotee is not, his mind is a lot more free. He depends on God and he does his job in the best capacity, in his best capacity. So he's not too bothered about what will come. That's not taken out. So mind is free to completely focus on work. So
Yeah.
he will give his best. It is part of his life to serve his family and God. So he will do it as a dutiful spiritualist. He will do his duties, whether it is a software job or doesn't matter for him. Whatever job he's destined to have, he will have it and he will do it.
Yes.
It is part of his life. It's not everything for him.
Got it, bro. Yeah, yeah. That's a good explanation, bro. That how one can see this change between from verse 58 to 59. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prabhu. Anybody else? Today everyone is calm.
Everybody understood everything. That's great.
That's great. But the number is a little low actually today. 5 people missed. We had always 15 people. 1 week gap, maybe.
Yes, bro. 1 week gap.
We should not give gaps. Unless one is transcendentally situated, it's not possible to cease from sense enjoyment. You know? The process of restriction from sense enjoyment by rules and regulations is something like restricting a diseased person from certain types of eatables. The patient, however, neither likes his restrictions nor loses his taste for eatables, right? That's how it works. Nobody loses his taste. Similarly, sense restriction by some spiritual process like Ashtanga Yoga in the matter of Yama Niyama, Asana Pranayama, Pratyahar, Dharana, Dhyana is recommended for less intelligent persons who have no better knowledge. But one who has tasted the beauty of the Supreme Lord Krishna in the course of his advancement in Krishna consciousness no longer has a taste for dead material things. Yeah. So he's contrasting Ashtanga Yoga with Bhakti Yoga. Prabhupada here, right? In Ashtanga Yoga, the process is one goes through this yama. Yama means do's, what you can do. Niyama means don'ts, what you should not do. Yama, Niyama, Ashtanga Yoga is also a process of advancing one's consciousness, advancing one spiritually. But it follows this Yama, Niyama, and then once you do Yama, Niyama sincerely, you can do asanas, to keep your body fit. And then pranayama to keep your mind fit. Pranayama stabilizes your mind. Asana stabilizes your body. Your kapha, vata, pitta would be stable through asanas. Through pranayama, your mind is stable. And then pratyahara means to give up sense enjoyment. No? You don't want to enjoy your senses. Prati ahar. Ahar means food. Prati ahar means to avoid food for the senses. Dharana. Once you avoid the food for the senses, practice dharana. Dharana means fix your mind on the spiritual aspect. Dhyana means to fix for longer periods. And then samadhi means you fix for more very long time. So this is the process of Ashtanga yoga. It has 8 limbs, starting with yama, ending in samadhi, right? So this is a mechanical process, because in this whole process there is no dependence on higher power to advance spiritually. But Bhakti Yoga works in contrast with this process, in the sense that Bhakti Yoga takes the lever of God. It's like if you're in a deep well, right? How hard it is for you to come by yourself holding rock after rock from the deep dark well, right? It's so hard. But if suppose you have a rope, somebody dropped a rope from top, you just catch hold of it and then slowly hang on to it, and then somebody will pull you. It's so easy, right? So that's how Bhakti Yoga is. Bhakti Yoga means you have the support. You're in this material world, dark. It's like a dark dungeon world. This whole world is a dark place, isn't it? Suppose there is no sun, right? How will this world be? The entire day and night will be dark, right? Just because we have a one bulb fixed by God, we are able to have that sunlight and able to live in this world. But otherwise, this world is not a place where we can live at all, right? So similarly, this entire cosmos, the material existence, is like a dark well. And once somebody falls in this well, is it's very difficult to come out actually. But the process of bhakti yoga is like taking the shelter of God through the process of chanting His name, or Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Vandanam, Padasevanam, all these aspects, various aspects in bhakti yoga, they take the help of God. When you have the help of God, the process accelerates. So that's why this process, Ashtanga Yoga, which we all heard, in great reverence, we all heard about Ashtanga Yoga as a great process of perfection. It is great process of perfection, but the only challenge with that is it depends on one's own power, one's own strength. There is nowhere there is taking the help or power of God into the process very much. But on the other hand, Bhakti Yoga is a process that completely surrounds around God. So it makes it very easy to. That's why even if you want to advance in the Ashtanga Yoga, you have to be actually a sannyasi even to begin with. You have to give up all kind of relations in this world. But even a grihastha can practice Bhakti Yoga, because the focus is on the positive. We don't focus on the negative. Meaning, I want to give, I need to, we need to do that, but it will automatically happen because of your attachment to the positive. Hope that makes it clear. Yatato hi api kaunteya purushasya vipaschita indriyani pramathini haranti prasabhan mana. The senses are so strong and impetuous, O Arjuna, that they forcibly carry away the mind even of a man of discrimination who is endeavoring to control them. This is so true, right? The senses are so strong and impetuous, very powerful, unconquerable, O Arjuna, that they forcibly carry the mind even of a man of discrimination who is endeavoring to control them. In this world, we hear about controlling our senses. We think that okay, we can do it, but Krishna is saying it's not that easy actually. It's very difficult. Even a person who is endeavoring to control them, he also may lose. He also may lose control on that. You know, because the way it works is your senses are attracted to certain things, right? For example, uh, you saw your favorite sweet, right? You know you have a problem, health problem, but you should not eat. But as soon as your your eye sees that object and your nose smells that object, immediately that information is sent to mind. Mind will explode in its desire to enjoy. It brings all its past experiences about enjoying that particular sweet in the way that you wanted in the past, right? And so with all that explosion of desires from the past, it becomes so. And if only nobody's around, you will just go and eat it. That's how it works. uh, so the verse says the senses are extremely strong and powerful, and they forcibly carry even the mind of a man of discrimination who is endeavoring to control them. It's very difficult. Basically, it's not easy. It takes time. It takes study, practice of spiritual life. Uh, and in fact, this is one of the reasons where the practice of Bhakti Yoga is powerful than any other process. For example, in the Puranas, we heard the story of great Vishwamitra, great says. He was practicing this particular Ashtanga Yoga for many, many thousands of years. At that time, the living entities were the human beings were living for at least a few 100,000 years or 100,000 years. I think that was a lifetime in Satya Yoga. So at that time, the sage has practiced, spending almost 30,000 30,000 years of his life, 30,000 years of his life in practicing Ashtanga Yoga. After that, what happened at the time? Indra would send Manaka to disturb Vishwamitra Muni's meditation. Hmm? Because that's how. Why he would send that? Why would he send her? The reason is, through when a person practices this kind of a mystic yoga for a certain period, after that period he would acquire certain powers. So if Vishwamitra Muni continues to perform, he would actually become the next Indra. But at least if he desires to take over that position, he will become eligible. So Indra would always worry about his position, so he would send Manaka to agitate through a uh, through agitate Vishwamitra Muni, and she would come, and with her ankle bell, she would just make some sound, and immediately this great sage who was practicing for thousands of years this process of Ashtanga Yoga immediately gets agitated, and he would marry her, and he would you know take a break from his continuous meditation he was doing, and he will lose his power, in the sense that he would lose his spiritual progress that he made. At least it would stop. So after enjoying for a long time, he again realizes what the mistake he made, and he rejects his wife and again goes back to meditation. Second time, Indra sends another damsel from Swargaloka. This time, having had this past experience of being overpowered by the sex desire by Manaka, this time he is more careful. He tries to not be disturbed, but that the damsel wouldn't give up on him. So Vishwamitra Muni gets agitated. He becomes this time angry, and he would open his eyes and completely uh, completely burn her, right? So first time he was agitated by lust. Second time he was agitated by anger. Again, because he went through that emotion, anger, he loses his spiritual power. So that's how it's very difficult, that's what uh, this verse is talking about. Senses are very strong. It would carry even a person of discrimination. So we should be very, we should not lose guard. This technique was used. I mean, this technique is used everywhere. If you look at um, even in Mahabharata war, right? Uh, who killed Abmanyu? What's his name? Drishtajumna? Huh.
Prabhu, what? Abhimanyu?
Uh,
Abhimanyu
who, who,
in Kauravas, right?
yeah, specifically, who killed him? Who killed Abhimanyu? Specifically, I think,
Duryodhana's brother.
no. Anyway, yeah. So that guy, after Abhimanyu gets killed on the 14th day, Arjuna promises, I'm going to kill this guy who killed my son next day. Uh, so when he makes that promise, it's not. I mean, that the promise would
Prabhu Jayadrat?
Jayadratha. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, Jayadratha.
Yeah, he was the reason that
Mm,
Abhimanyu got stuck in the Chakravyuh.
yeah, he would get stuck and he gets killed, right? Because he would stop Arjuna from entering that, helping Abhimanyu. And Abhimanyu was surrounded by almost 10 Maharathis, and uh, you know, he would get killed.
Yes.
That's a wrong warfare to. That's a violation of law of war,
It's warfare, yes.
to conquer one person by 10 people. But anyway, after that incident, Arjuna was takes a revenge, takes a promise that I'm going to kill this Jayadratha next day. And the war would begin, and this time Drona and everybody would try to keep Arjuna in guard so that he can't move at all towards Jayadratha. And the promise that Arjuna makes is, if I can't kill Jayadratha, I'm going to kill myself. So the Kauravas think, okay, somehow if we can stop today, we'll get rid of this guy, Arjuna, the biggest enemy for us. And their whole goal is not to kill him, but to just keep him on guard. So almost it becomes evening. It is inevitable that Arjuna is going to die now, because almost 5 o'clock, and Arjuna is not able to budge a moment. Is conquer Jayadratha. It becomes so clear that Arjuna cannot move ahead anymore. At that time, the sun is almost, sun is setting, but not yet. At the time, Lord Krishna would try to help him. In the sense, he would, with his Sudarshan Chakra, he would cover the sun temporarily. And suddenly there appears to be like a sunset. And when there is sunset, Duryodhana and the whole party would rejoice. They would let their guard down, meaning they are thinking, oh, now Arjuna is done with. They let their guard down. That's exactly this verse is about. So when you are not very careful, your senses will be conquered. So when they let their guard down, immediately Krishna removed the chakra. Sun is glaring, and Jayadratha from nowhere, he was until then he was just in fear and knocking somewhere down. He comes out and he cheers with his full mouth, mingling with Duryodhana, and he was in the open. Krishna would remove the chakra. Sun is again back in full glory. Sun is visible. Krishna would say, "There is sun. Here is Jayadratha. Cut his head." And immediately Arjuna would know, kill Jayadratha. And there was another challenge. Jayadratha's father, he is a great sage or a great rishi. He has a boon that whoever cuts off the head of my son and makes it fall on the ground, that person who conquers my son in that way, his head would burst into million pieces. So Krishna would tell him, shoot such that, cut this guy's head, and make it fall in the lap of his father. So Arjuna does exactly that. So he would cut, and the head would flow, and it will fall in the lap of his father. His father would just stand up. The head would fall on the floor because he was the person who caused the head fall on the floor. He's going to immediately his head would burst. So Krishna would help him conquer two things at same with one shot. Yeah, some people say, oh, why did Krishna do that? Why did he cover the sunlight? It's not practice, but Krishna would say this is acceptable when the opponent party violates the rule by doing what they did in killing Abhimanyu. He is only a 16-year-old boy. There are about 10 people who conquered all together, one person. And even though he was a great warrior, he couldn't control on all sides from the fight from these 10 Maharathis, all super duper fighters. So when there is such a thing, then that can be countered with another thing like this, like what Arjuna did in killing Jayadratha. Okay, so it's not like everything is plain and plain. That's how things are. Okay, let's read this verse. Tani sarvani samyamya yuktamasita matpara vasehi yashendriyani tasya prajna pratishtita. One who restrains his senses, keeping them under full control, and fixes his consciousness upon me is known a man of steady intelligence. This is the first time Krishna would use matparaha. Matparaha means fix your consciousness upon me. Until then, he would not refer to himself as God actually. So this is the first time in the entire Bhagavad Gita where Krishna would refer to Arjuna to fix his mind upon me, upon Krishna. So one who restrains his senses, restraining the first step, keeping them in full control, fixes his consciousness upon me, the positive aspect. This is negative, restrain the negative, stop the negative, control, conquest, right? So now, fix your mind upon me is known a man of steady intelligence. Such a person is a person of steady intelligence. This is the highest conception of yoga perfection, is Krishna consciousness clearly explained in this verse. And unless one is Krishna consciousness, it is not at all possible to control the senses. As cited above, the great says Durvasa Muni picked a quarrel with Ambarisa, and Durvasa Muni unnecessarily became angry out of pride. This is another incident where between Durvasa Muni and Ambarish Maharaja. Durvasa Muni is a great sage. He becomes angry out of pride. When you become angry out of pride, what happens? You could not check your senses. On the other hand, the king, although not as powerful a yogi as the sage, but a devotee of the Lord, silently tolerated all the sage's injustices and thereby emerged victorious. So, because the difference between what is the difference between Ambarish Muni and Ambarish Maharaj and Durvas Muni? Ambarish Maharaj is a devotee of Lord Vishnu. Durvas Muni is a Ashtanga yogi. So one time Durvas Muni visits Ambarish Maharaj, right? And Ambarish Maharaj was actually fasting for the welfare of his citizens. He is a king. For the welfare of his citizens, he was fasting for a long, long time. And that day is Dvadasi, and where he is supposed to break his fast. And Durvas Muni comes, visits him, and before Durvas Muni and all his disciples would sit down to have prasadam, Ambarish Maharaj has to break his fast. And how does he do that? He has to break his fast by generally by eating food, right? Food offered to God. But in this case, he doesn't want to break his fast before his guest eats Durvas Muni. But if he doesn't break, the result of his all the all the austerities that he had done through his fasting would be gone. So he is obliged for his citizens to break his fast. So he has to break his fast, but at the same time, he should not displease Durvas Muni by taking anything before the guest takes. Now he was in a dilemma. Ultimately, he consulted his minister and his own sages, and he, instead of eating food, he takes tulsi leaf. Tulsi leaf is like breaking as well as not breaking. So when you eat tulsi leaf, it fulfills the requirement that you have to take something after to break your fast, but it also means that you are not really eating anything. No? So he takes that tulsi leaf, and Durvas Muni hears that he had taken something before he offered them anything. So he was agitated by this aspect that this is not proper uh, satkar, Atithi Satkar, right? You have to eat only after the visitor takes his food. So he was not very happy with him, but and then so uh, he tries to create a demon to kill Ambarish Maharaj. Uh, so at that time, he was protected by Lord Ambarish Maharaj, and in fact, Lord would send a Sudarshan Chakra which would kill the demon that he created, and it would run behind Durvas Muni, and Durvas Muni would go everywhere in this world, from in this world as well as into higher planets. Even ultimately he goes to Vishnu Loka also. So when he goes to Vishnu Loka, their Lord says, if you have upset a devotee, even I cannot protect you. You have to go and beg forgiveness from the devotee himself. So ultimately he comes and falls at the feet of Ambarish Maharaj. And Ambarish Maharaj has no desire to take any forgiveness. He's a pure devotee. Uh, he was actually worried that Durvas Muni was going through all this trouble. And he immediately prays to Sudarshana Chakra to not actually punish Durvas Muni. And Sudarshana immediately relinquishes uh, you know, his trying to conquer Durvas Muni. Is not anymore a threat to Durvas Muni. Goes back to Vishnu. So that's the pastime. Ambarish Muni Ambarish Maharaj, he was the Grahastha, he was ruling his country, he was doing everything like any of us. But he is a great devotee. Just by being a great devotee, he was actually able to control his senses much better than Durvash Muni, who was practicing Ashtanga Yoga for many years. So the point is, a devotee can easily control his senses because of his dependence on God. Hmm? On the other hand, the king, although not a powerful yogi, as the says, but a devotee of the Lord, silently tolerated all the sages' injustices and thereby emerged victorious. The king was able to control his senses because of the following qualification as mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam Savai Manah Krishna Paravindayo Vachamsi Vaikunta Gunanuvarnane Karau Harer Mandiramajinadisu Sutim Chakraschuta Sakatodhyadaye. Yeah. So how Ambarish Maharaj practiced being a king, how he practiced Krishna consciousness or God consciousness. King Ambarisa fixed his mind on the lotus feet of Krishna, engaged his words in describing the abode of the Lord, his hands in cleansing the temple of the world of the Lord, his ears in hearing the pastimes of the Lord, his eyes in seeing the form of Lord, his body in touching the body of devotee, his nostrils in smelling the flower of flowers offered to the lotus feet of Lord, his tongue in tasting the tulsi leaf offered to him, his legs in traveling to the holy places where his temple is situated, his head is offering obeisances unto the Lord, and his desire in fulfilling the desires of the Lord. And all these qualifications made him fit to become a Matpara devotee of the Lord. Basically, he was doing everything for the pleasure of the Lord. Hmm? Such a beautiful explanation of how King Ambarisha used all his senses in the service of the Lord. The word Matpara is most significant in this connection. How one can become Matpara is described in the life of King Maharaj Ambarisha. Baladev Vidyabhusme, great scholar and acharya in the line of Matpara, remarks Madbhakti Prabhavena Sarvendriya Vijaya Purvika Swatma Drishti Sulebhati Bhava. The senses can be completely controlled only by the strength of the devotional service to Krishna. If you want to control your senses, the best process is bhakti to Krishna. Also, the example of fire is sometimes given. As a blazing fire burns everything within a room, Lord Vishnu, situated in the heart of the yogi, burns up all kinds of impurities. The Yoga Sutra also prescribes meditation on Vishnu and not meditation on the void. Some people say, oh, you can meditate on the void, nothingness. Meditation on Vishnu is the right process. The so-called yogis who meditate on something other than Vishnu form simply waste their time in a vain search after some phantasmagoria. We have to be Krishna conscious, devoted to the personality of God. This is the aim of real yoga. So that's what Krishna is recommending. Matpara. Yuktamasita matpara. Fix your consciousness upon me. Do anything, but keep your consciousness on me, fixed on me. That's exactly how Ambarish Maharaj did. And he was able to even get better off Durvas Muni. He doesn't want to, but Durvas Muni forced, and so it happened. And how exactly he did? This is exactly how he was leading his life. Even though he's a great king, but his mind is always on the lotus feet of Krishna. So he was able to, there is nothing that can disturb his life. Yeah. So these are very beautiful verses. Next verses we'll discuss next week. How mind, uh, you know, mind goes over everything. how exactly a jiva drops down in his consciousness. Beautiful verse. Psychology of how things work. The science of how things work, actually. Okay, everyone is so silent. Can you unmute yourself, please? I'm really surprised by the silence today. Amazing silence.
Oh, no, Prabhu. I'm there.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare
Yeah.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. How is any questions? Please ask. Otherwise, I feel like I spoke something which is completely didn't make any sense.
No, Prabhuji, I don't have any questions.
Everything is clear.
I
Okay.
understood, but I just don't have any questions.
Okay, good.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I have a question. Like in Bhakti Yoga, like we are basically practicing at home, right? Like we at work, when we do not like say like meet expectations, we get feedback and we figure out that okay, we have to improve. But at home, like when we are doing like the Bhakti Yoga or personal devotional service, how do we know that we are progressing in the right direction and actually moving forward?
Yeah, that's why we keep besides this class, right? This class is one way we interact with each other, we ask questions and answers. We can also have some devotee friends, or are those people who are practicing the yoga that we are practicing, bhakti yoga, right? So conversing with them, sharing your experiences and things where you can improve. Yeah, we always need friends, association. That's how um, that's how we all make progress. You all should become friends with each other, all of you. We are like one family, right? Going together in this journey. So we should all connect with each other. Because of COVID, we could not, but once COVID is over, we can all uh, come together more often.
Sounds good.
And personally also, I some of you ask me questions in WhatsApp personal messages. Those are all welcome, and those are all important. Those are all stepping stones for our in the spiritual journey. Hmm? You can ask me, you can ask Nitin Prabhu. We have many others also in the temple. Uh, if you have any good friends, feel free to ask them. Check if if you have any doubt, if what you're doing is can be improved, or things like that.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Always we need some feedback system. Otherwise, we never know whether we are doing the right thing or right way. We all especially like we all I started this thing in India, Krishna consciousness long back. We all had counselors. Counselor means a person who you can always he's like your he has already been through this journey before me, for at least a decade before me. So like for example, even during my marriage or everything, he really made my path so clear, so easy. He had gone through all these things before me, so i I was able to get a lot of help from his from my conversations with him. He would clarify many things. When I faced some challenges, I was in anxiety, he would explain me in a give a spiritual perspective of the situation, how to see it. So we all need some support system, right? We all That's how, because we learn this theory, but when it comes to applying, it's not easy. It's all theory until you really face a situation in life where you can actually apply this theory, right? So initially, when we are going through challenges in life, we all will go through. Nobody is excluded. Everybody is, in this world had to go through challenges. And when we go through that, even though you're studying Gita, you are going through all these lessons, you may not be really, able to face the situation in the first instance. Then you check back with the devotee on how I could have reacted, how I should have taken this situation better. Then they would give you some answers, their perspective. It may not be the best answer, but at least you get a different perspective. You have a Now you face the same situation again. you are far better. I have personally experienced that. Yeah. So you are far better facing the same situation the second time because you have learned some lesson from your discussions or from your own practice. So that's how it works. It's not that we all started learning the Gita, tomorrow you'll be all great yogis. No, it doesn't work like that. It takes time. It takes slowly. Keep attending the classes. Keep your spiritual spark growing. Keep chanting, and when you face situations, you can try to face it, and take help of devotees, and that's how you learn. That's a uh, that's how this whole thing works. Okay, make sense, Aranya Mataji?
Yeah, it makes sense. Thank you. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Anyone else? Okay, so we'll end the class. All the very best. Take care of yourself. I think again, Corona is increasing the number of cases are increasing, deaths are increasing in India. I'm sorry, in America as well as in other places around the world, in Europe and India. So it's very important at this time. Take care of your health. That's the most important thing. And secondly, your own job, because situation is not extremely very favorable, right? So take care of both these things. Okay, so thank you all. We'll meet again next week. Hare Krishna.
I just wanted
Hare
to wish Happy Dashera, Prabhu. Tomorrow,
Prabhuji, Hare Krishna.
tomorrow is Dashera.
Oh yeah, Dashera is tomorrow, right?
Yeah, Happy Dashera. Wishing
Oh
everyone.
yeah. Happy Dashera to everyone.
Happy Dashan.
Thank you, Mataji, Shweta Mataji.
Welcome, Prabhu. I think that is the reason I think a lot of people have not joined because of Navratris.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, that could be very much the reason. Actually, yeah. Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you
Please,
so much.
please
Hare
chant.
Krishna.
Please chant Hare Krishna. Everyone,
Yes.
please. At least one round.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you all.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you, Prabhuji.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.